Work-life balance has always been a concept in business, but it's become a lot more prevalent in sort of 21st century, and you'll probably have seen this on LinkedIn quite a bit. In that we struggle to be disconnected from our workplaces these days. It's natural because we have so many telecommunications devices available to us now. We have laptops, we have mobile phones, we have sort of Skype and face-to-face meeting software. What this does to us is that when we try and leave the workplace, we don't actually leave mentally, and we're often reachable, and we often have access to things that are hanging over us in the workplace that we then take home with us and into our beds essentially. So when I say that, I mean, if you think of life being or the work week being in three segments, you have 24 hours in a day, you're supposed to sleep for 8 hours, you generally work 8 hours, 9 to 5 traditionally, and you have 8 hours left to do everything else that needs to get done. That includes, your commute, getting kids to school, getting ready, having dinner, watching TV, whatever you do, having a hobby, if you have a hobby in the evenings, so all those sorts of things. So if you picture that as a pie chart and you've got three segments, you want to be servicing each of those three segments equally, and it's difficult to do that if you are spending, even mentally, just thinking about work for 10 hours a day, then you sleep for 6 hours a day, and you've got 6 hours left for, you've got 8 hours left for play. So if you think of it in terms of work-life play, you are trying to spin three plates and keep them all balanced. If one starts to topple, then naturally things go wrong. So this has been linked to workplace stress, to workplace induced mental health issues, or to aggravating difficulties that you have with your mental health and with your physical health as well, because you're not living in ideal conditions. You're not getting enough sleep, which impacts all sorts of things in your life. You're not getting enough time to rest and recharge, which mostly affects you mentally. You're constantly stimulated and under stress and thinking about things that you can't control, which is a big source of stress, and is the primary way that you can reduce stress, is to accept that you can't control it. You're not in the meeting yet, you can't get there, you can't, so stop thinking about it. You can't control it. If it's going to go wrong, you can't do anything about it now, that sort of thing. So getting back to my point, work-life balance is this concept that worked in the days of 9 to 5, where you went to an office, you sat at a desk, 9 o'clock, you plugged in, you unplugged at 5 o'clock, you went home, you went to sleep, you came back at 9 o'clock. There was this balance. There was this 8 hours where you were there and then you weren't there. They might lock up your offices at 5 o'clock. You couldn't take home a computer with you, you couldn't take home your team with you, and these things didn't really exist when they were invented, in the sort of 1920s or so, with factory workers. You came in and did a day's work, 9 to 5, and you went home. So that's my point. So now there's a lot more trust and discipline on the hands of the employee to manage these things for themselves, and that's what I don't get with the opposition to flexible working. There seems to be a lack of trust in the employee to manage themselves working from home and things like that. They actually manage themselves all the time, because if they have any kind of personal access, if they have any access to their work environment, then they have to manage themselves anyway. For me personally, I've worked flexibly to some degree my whole working life, and it's something that I've had to sort of take and find my own ways of managing it. And to share that with you, I think it's best put in this concept of work-life blend. So the idea that, okay, it might just be necessary that you do work a 10-hour day, or you do catch up on some emails in the evening for a couple hours because you've had a really long day of meetings, and you do maybe you do have a doctor's appointment in the middle of the day, so you're allowed to go from work, but then that impacts your workload. So it all mixes itself up, and that hard segregation of not being able to be in the office to do your job, not having to be in the office to do your job, not having to be present, isn't there anymore. That control against you, allowing these lines to blur, isn't there anymore. So the way we deal with this is that if you picture that pie chart, if you have to spend 10 hours at work, then you calculate it that you've had to say no to personal time. So you might have planned to go to the gym that day and you didn't go because you had to stay a bit do a bit of extra work and that was more important to you, that's perfectly fine. But make sure that you then repay the debt that if you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, to sort of slightly misuse an expression, you need to repay Peter. You've taken those 2 hours out of your personal time one day, you need to add those 2 hours back in on another day. And if you manage this in a literal sense of, that's literally how it works, I have 8 hours for each of these, and if I add hours to one and take away from the other, that needs to be repaid sometime this week, and you enforce that, it has massive impacts on what you're able to get done in your work environment. So it benefits your employer. It has massive impact on what you're able to do in your personal life, so your quality of life, your time you get to spend with your children, time you get to spend pursuing hobbies, time you get to spend looking after your own health and having just a good life, not having a massive to-do list that's waiting around because you're always working all the time. And you get to sleep and get enough sleep and live a long healthy life and not have to force yourself to retire early through sickness. Please realise the detriments that you can have, the dangers of not maintaining a good work-life blend, and we'll call it that. I think is a more appropriate term. And you can get crazy with this. If you wanted to get up and spend a couple hours, sometimes I might go to a coffee shop and I'll spend a couple hours working there because it gets my head out of being at home if I'm at home too much, or I might go to a different office, or I might go somewhere, be around some people, and I'll work there for 4 hours, and I'll go to home and I'll work for 4 hours. And I do these sorts of things, and I make sure I keep track of my time all the time, and it just gives you an overall better life, and it makes you happy. And that's what we're aiming for, surely. The employer wants happy, healthy, satisfied employees providing their service for them on their behalf, and they don't want sick people with under stress and unproductive and lacking sleep and feeling ill and having to take lots of sickness leave and all this sort of thing. And the employee wants a good life. So have a look at what I'm posting, this concept work-life blend. Have a look at the pie chart I'm putting up. It's kind of obvious, but I thought if I give you a visualization, you'll sort of, maybe it will give you a bit more motivation to actually grab hold of something and track your day and manage it in this way. I hope it helps you. I hope it helps you deal with flexible working, especially in this time of the coronavirus and this pandemic, and a lot of us are working from home for the first time. We are doing these things in a new way. This is new to us, so I hope it helps you out. Let me know if you want to. Thanks for watching. Cheers.